I am as my father Akatosh made me, as are you, Dovahkiin. We were made to dominate. The will to power is in our blood. You feel it in yourself, do you not?
The Merethic era and the rise of our beloved and dominant draconic birds was indeed a time to behold. These inherently dominant creatures loved reigning over lives, which they deemed puny and insignificant. The creatures I was vaguely referring to are in fact dragons, the renowned Dova of Nirn. The Dova came to be on the continent of Akavir, a continent plagued by unconventional barbarism and tribes which rightfully so would be feared by the civilized demographics on Tamriel. The creation myth of these dragons closely ties in with one of the entities I'm going to be talking and theorizing about today. Hey there everyone, this is Xith, and today we're going to be stating how Miraak not only betrayed the dragon cult, but also Akatosh himself. The second option of betrayal is rarely ever mentioned throughout the community, and I believe that it was far more important than Miraak's divergence from the dragon cult. Dragon rule was prominent throughout the late stages of the Merethic era, especially in our frigid province of Skyrim. Skyrim, after the demise of the ancient Falmer, was home to the Atmorans, a race of hardened men who brought their religious beliefs from Atmora of old. The ancient Nordic pantheon derives from the continent of Atmora, where dragon rule was already established long before their migration to Skyrim. The migration of these Atmorans obviously brought the pantheon and members of a specific cult with it, which back then indirectly planted the seeds for a completely obedient population of Atmorans in the probable case of dragons ever wanting to venture into Tamriel, which, as we know, indeed did happen by the end of the Merethic era. It was a common theme for Atmorans and ancient Nords to worship animal gods, a theme that was recurring in their pantheon, and the chief animal of this pantheon was, as one might presume, Alduin, the self-proclaimed firstborn of Akatosh. Ancient Nords viewed Alduin as most races of men today view Akatosh. To them, Alduin was as Akatosh currently is. But the reality behind it all is much more complex than the ancient Nordic pantheon might have you believe. I'm not sure whether Alduin himself actually appeared in front of lesser members of the dragon cult, but I'm sure dragon priests had the pleasure of admiring what they thought was a god firsthand. Dragon priests were exclusively chosen members of the dragon cult that were given a great deal of power as a sign of favoritism from Alduin and his lieutenants. These priests were situated at crucial regions that oversaw large portions of Skyrim's terrain and settlements. But that kind of power is nearly always met with lust, and a certain dragon priest named Miraak couldn't resist the possibility of acquiring more of it. But little did he know he was a divine exception, for he was a precious relic of Akatosh, a Dovahkiin.
They wanted to use me to deal with Alduin, Hakon and the rest. I chose otherwise.
Miraak, as a dragon priest, was never content with how attentive and oppressive his draconic masters were, and this made him secretly seek other, more efficient means of mastering his already iconic set of skills. His curiosity led him straight to a black book, an artifact of Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric Prince of Knowledge and Memory. Miraak soon took to abiding by Hermaeus Mora's will, and their unusual alliance led to Miraak fruitfully developing himself as a force to be reckoned with. It's unknown if Miraak knew his inborn gift as a Dragonborn before he met Hermaeus Mora, but things soon came to a conclusion when he successfully learned to bend the will of any dragon via his Thu'um. This particular shout was Hermaeus' ultimate gift to Miraak, and this is presumably when Miraak started serving him indefinitely. Miraak's ultimate goal was to usurp the position of Alduin and begin a reign of his own. But this was met with harsh resistance from the other dragon priests, but only one defeated Miraak and nearly even killed him. Miraak respectively killed a dozen or more dragons, who were supposedly far superior than mankind. But before the Dragon Wars spiraled into all-out warfare, Miraak was contacted by Hakon, Gormlaith, and Feldir, the original representatives of the Dragon Rebellion wishing to rid themselves from the grasp of their dragon tyrants. But Miraak ultimately decided to fulfill his own destiny of totalitarian dominance. This just goes to show how much of an impact Miraak could have had if he was guided properly. Miraak is the first recorded Dragonborn, and I sense that this wasn't a mere coincidence. Nothing much is known about Miraak's childhood or even prior life, but there was obviously something stronger that made him associate himself with the dragon cult, an urge which he just couldn't relieve himself of. Hermaeus Mora was probably the driving reason for the discovery of his hidden gift, and this, paired with the bend will shout he was taught, gave him the power to force dragons to teach him the Thu'um. And with all of this knowledge under his belt, Miraak could have easily enacted Akatosh's grand plan of stopping Alduin's unwanted reign, because if you realistically think about it, the sole purpose of a Dragonborn is to act as a figure of equilibrium amongst dragons. A Dragonborn is equal, if not capable, of far more than a regular dragon. Now, one would ask why Akatosh would give such a controversial person his priceless blessing. Well, Akatosh most likely couldn't have predicted the path Miraak took in his adolescent years, but even if he did know where Miraak's path would lead him, sometimes the most unconventional option yields far more favorable results than initially intended, and this, as with most of the choices the Aedra have undertaken, was a huge gamble, and it loosely worked in Akatosh's favor. Or did it? Yes, Miraak did choose to betray the Dragon Cult and Alduin as a whole, but his ego and rampant decline into extremism would have resulted in just another tyrannical figure reigning over the free people of Tamriel, thus why it wouldn't have followed Akatosh's wish of delaying the inevitable, and the inevitable being Alduin. I will go out on a limb and claim that Miraak isn't inherently evil, nor even as evil as implied in the Dragonborn DLC expansion. He's just too enchanted with ideologies that would cement him as the demigod that he so desperately yearned to become. Miraak chose the independent route. He completely disregarded the true purpose of his gift, and this sense of independency and immortality in him also bred a lot of misguided ambition, which finally proved to be substantially more than he bargained for. I don't know if fate nor Akatosh himself decided Miraak's sudden outcome, but one could speculate that Akatosh wasn't pleased with how it was all envisioned, and it wouldn't be ludicrous to assume that Akatosh viewed this as just another form of betrayal. The Aedra obviously don't have as much influence over Nirn as the Daedra do, but the events that outline the ascendance of dragons and the Thu'um is a testament to how gracious the Aedra can be. Miraak seemed like the perfect sleeper agent to combat what was an ever-growing dragon threat, yet his loyalty belonged to none other than himself, or at least that's what he'd have you believe. Hermaeus Mora is the actual and forceful owner of his loyalty. The will of both Kain and Akatosh fell into Paarthurnax's hands after Miraak's unwillingness, and his intervention could have likely be perceived as yet another indirect deed of the Aedra, because I highly doubt Paarthurnax's change of heart and nature derived from his own will to redeem himself. Dominance is irresistible in Dodova. It's an inborn addiction to dominate one another. That's exactly why Miraak, who had a slight taste of infinite knowledge, acted upon it to build a legacy of his own. Miraak wouldn't have stopped at divinity, nor at omnipotence. Death was his only destiny.
This is the only way, Dragonborn. The only way I can be free.